Welcome, friends, to Yoga and Podcast. This show brings the science and the magic of yoga and mind-body practices down to earth for the everyday person to help you live your best life. I'm your host, Ashley Weber, a mind-body teacher and forever student who is oh so curious about all things yoga and. On today's episode, we will chat with human rights activist, yoga teacher, and my friend, Fonzy Hernandez. Fonzy and I both identify as queer. We are both yoga teachers, and we often end up discussing the connection between yoga and queerness, which is today's topic. I really appreciated this conversation, and I am so grateful to Fonzy for sharing his wisdom and insights in this episode. I can't wait for you to hear it. Let's sit back, relax, and enjoy the episode, y'all. Joining us on today's episode is human rights activist, yoga teacher, and my friend, Fonzy Hernandez. Welcome back to the show, Fonzy.
Thank you so much. I am so honored and I'm excited to be back. Very excited.
Oh, and you're back. This is your third time. So what does it feel like to be back thrice?
You know, it's so interesting. I was thinking about this while I was on a run, and I'm like, wow, I think the last time you interviewed me, I was ending my 20s and I started my 30s immediately after. Yeah. So it's like nice to really compare my thoughts. You know, like we grow out of what we believe. Our beliefs change. So it's really obviously a full circle moment coming back. So thank you.
Oh, I love it. And how do you like being in your 30s versus your 20s?
I feel way much better. I always say, and I've told you this before, 20s is like adult puberty. So it's all about figuring it out. And when you're 30, I feel like you're still figuring it out, but you got it a little bit more together. So
exactly. Well, today I am like so stoked about today's conversation because you and I talk about this all the time. Yoga and queerness. This is like what we talk about at dinner. Let's talk about it. Thoughts on queerness.
I think it's only natural to really talk about this topic because it's always been there. You know, I feel like queer culture has been one of those cultures that have been so suppressed, and there's so many beautiful historic moments that we have missed out on, and the children that come before us have missed out on, that could catapult even more inspiration in our lives, and just be to be seen, right? To be seen, I think that's just so. And when I say queer people, I mean I also mean everyone else. I think we all we can relate to feeling different.
Let's talk about the identity part of it. So Fonzy, what does self-identity mean to you?
You know, I feel like self-identity, and it's hard to coin because it's, you know, I mentioned earlier ending my 20s and starting my 30s, it has changed whatever I consider a self-identity has changed. You know, I am Fonzy, but my name doesn't define who I am either. You know, like I don't know if that is clear enough on my part, or like, you know, my hair isn't part of me, but to me, I'm a very emotional human, and I feel like my identity is a lot of what my emotions are. You know, that like my emotions don't change, they go in circles, right? So that's kind of what self-identity I have constructed as self-identity. There's a lot more to that, I think, but obviously to make it short, self-identity is, I mean, like, there is that inside part of you, right? And yes, the external helps express your self-identity, right? So having that said, that's what I think self-identity is.
Yeah, I think self-identity, like, we don't necessarily lead with our sexuality and self-identity. Like, we're so much more than just, a couple of things, right? And you're saying it's your emotions, like you're leading more with that, like who you are emotionally.
Absolutely.
How you identify. Yeah.
I do love that you said that, because I think it's we don't lead with our sexuality, or, I think when it comes to down to that, it's really like we follow our self-expression and our identity with our joy, for our joy in some ways. You know what I mean? Like, what makes me happy? My hair, doing this to my hair, or like going to the pool. That's an external way of expressing your inward self-identity, if that makes sense.
Who you are as a person, what you're drawn to. Yeah.
Yes. And that's going to change.
Yes. So what is your personal definition of queerness, Fonzy?
I really love identifying with the word queer, because it kind of leaves an open-endedness to in which I can, like, change my mind, or pursue things that I don't normally pursue. And I think that's beautiful, because tomorrow is a different day. And I think it really, it's, to me, it's an art. Obviously, queer is an interpretation. That's my interpretation of what queerness is. And I think it's a very beautiful word that we've taken power back to.
Yes, it used to be derogatory, and now we're taking it back. And what I love about the word queer is, to your point of, there's an open-endedness, but like, versus, say, the other terms, like, and no shade on bisexuality at all, but I feel like it's almost like you have one foot in each side and you're rattling a line. Whereas queer, it's more spacious. It's more, there's more room for interpretation. There's less, I don't know. And there's just, it's more positive, in my opinion. Like, it's just, it feels a little more comfortable to sit in that space. And it's a larger catch-all, and so.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's why I love queer. Is that your cat?
Yeah.
I love it.
I wasn't sure it was
as bi-curious or queer.
I don't know. They're out there for sure. I do think it's very interesting that you say that, because I mean, I think a lot of what bisexuality is, it's misinterpreted a lot too, but and see, that's the thing, like, bisexual people can be queer people, right? And I think we forget that as well. But and so, like you said, it's a huge and broader umbrella that kind of catches all in some ways.
Yeah, and to your point of people can misinterpret it, I've had people ask me really stupid questions about bisexuality. So I think that's the other thing, is there is just, I've seen a lot of negative associations with it, and it's just kind of one of those words that you want it to be
right,
people to understand. And I feel like maybe queer is just somehow easier for people to understand. So anyway, that's thought.
Totally. I mean, it's an inquiry, right?
Yes.
I think that puts it pretty well.
So let's get into some of the common threads on yoga and queerness.
Mhm.
We have a lot of thoughts on this. So I'll let you kind of start, like anything come to mind linking yoga and queerness.
Well, I feel like queerness has always existed in the yoga teachings, even in like, I think it's a disservice to, it would be a disservice for us to think queerness and yoga are separate from each other. Because the yoga practice asks us to forever question it all, right?
Oh, yeah.
So like, if you're not in your, this is very, if you're not sitting in life or going through uh, your life questioning things, that itself is yoga. When you're questioning something, it's like, what is my truth, what is this? And if you're not, then like, you're just going through life, right? And with none of it, I'm saying that, having that said, I'm not saying one or the other is equal or lesser than the other as well. So that's what I think about queerness and yoga. I do think that it's always been there. It's just one of those things, like I said in the beginning, we don't recognize.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I love you're going deeper, you're questioning, and when I think of it, I think immediately I think of the nonviolence part, because now it's I think, it's still not easy, but it's easier for queer people than it's been. And like, I don't know, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, there was more reason to kind of closet yourself, and that's a lot of shame. We know,
Yeah.
self-violence, right? Like, but you sometimes you do have to closet to be safe, right, to the outside
Right.
world. And when I think of yoga, I think of the yama, I believe it's ahimsa, the nonviolence, speaking your truth, being true, being authentic. And yoga kind of peels those layers back, so you start to realize a deeper self, and that can be one of them. Oh my God, I'm queer and I didn't even realize it.
Right. And like, if you look at the historical context of like the yoga, people who did practice yoga and practice practice, and when I say practice, not the physical, but like meditated and did these practices that helped themselves, because it's technically therapy, if you really look at the teachings, right? And a lot of these the people that practice yoga protested, and they're activists and community organizers. So they were for the people that were marginalized. This practice was for people, which is like something we never really talk about, right? So it's a, like I said, it's a disservice for us to not question what is happening in our society, whether it's like within ourselves, like, why do I think that way, or why does my mind immediately go after this, or why do I feel this way? Shame, like, what is that? Like, I always say to people, the way you treat yourself is the way you're asking others to treat you. That's a lot to digest. I have to still digest.
It's so good though, and it's so true.
Right.
What are your thoughts about just kind of the solar and the lunar energy that's within us, that's within our yoga practice? Like, any thoughts on that?
Yes. So I have a lot of opinions about that, and this is why, like, when it's like, why should we be using inclusive language? It doesn't only benefit non-binary people and queer people. It also benefits, I guess you would call them like hetero, like straight people. I don't know. I mean,
I think it's cis straight people, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it would benefit them too, because I think we live in a society where we immediately, when you're born a girl or a boy, you're put into a box where you're not allowed to be a certain thing out of that. Otherwise, you're considered too feminine or too masculine. When in reality, every human in this life, in this world, has both equally and should express those both equally as well. And it's not only helpful for us, but it's also something super, I think it becomes a mental health issue after a while, because people aren't allowed to express themselves in their own way.
Yeah, their selves are repressed, and then
Right.
you could say yoga kind of can, in some ways, liberate yourself on the mat. I mean, maybe not always, but like if you want to do a really powerful warrior 2 or warrior 1, or just a really sweaty practice, and you're told you should be a dainty little girl who shouldn't sweat. Like, one example of, there's something really beautiful about
Absolutely. I mean, like, if you think even about the practice and you see someone practice, there's such a beauty in it where there's like both equal masculine and feminine aspects
there really
of this practice. And if you're looking outside in, right? And it's only natural to like honor that. And I think that's why I think, people question, well, why should I be using inclusive language? And it's not, it's for people who identify as non-binary, but it's also a way of creating a safe space for people who don't necessarily want to express themselves or be non-binary, right? They can explore other modalities that are quote unquote considered either feminine or masculine, if I'm making sense. But
yeah, so you're saying, like, for instance, if you weren't to use if you were to use non-inclusive language in a yoga class, you're kind of adhering to those boxes that have been opposed us.
Right. I agree.
And then by using inclusive language, you're allowing that box to open up and let people just come out of the box. And so my question is, what is an example of some inclusive language in a yoga class?
Well, like right away, I mean, obviously it's a simple example of, like, you're a yoga teacher and you're walking in, or you've experienced a yoga teacher's, hey guys,
Yeah.
Or, I mean, I've seen, like, I've seen there be a lot of women in a room, and the teachers speak to all the women, and then there's like, male in there, or me. Which and which I don't care, like, I'm someone who's like, whatever. But that's also me. I've built up the strength to be like, it's nothing. I don't take, like, whatever. But it would be of a benefit to that teacher to add, inclusive language, or, even with, like, there's the do's and don'ts, why do the, it's just out of our own benefit to add that. It's like putting a name to the practice as a he or a she. Why?
I see. Yeah.
And like when it's really just the practice.
That's it. Yeah. It's not a car. You know how people name their cars, or they like call their cars.
Right.
Like, I'm a prenatal yoga teacher, and when I think about it, like, I'll say if there's a baby in your belly, because you don't know, like, they could be man, or you don't know, and so if they're just calling that the anatomy of it, but not like pregnant ladies,
right?
I don't, that's
well, and it's also like, it kind of encourages me to learn people's names.
Mm.
And I know like this isn't super deep, but it's just as simple as like, hey, Mark, hey, Linda, or like, what's your name? Tell me, like, rather than be like he, she, her, you know, or like, I think it makes it safe, like for people around the group. I mean, the class to feel that way. You know what I mean? And or be who they are, or more inviting. I think
More
that's very
inviting.
cozy.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
not assuming.
Right.
Yeah. So what about like ambiguity? Because I feel like queerness, there's a lot of ambiguity in queerness. There can be ambiguity in yoga.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think ambiguity is, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what is so scary for people to accept what ambiguity is, because it reminds us of the impermanence of life.
Oh, wow. That gives me
Mm-hmm.
chills. That's actually a really good point. Yeah. I never thought
But I think it's scary for people to really accept that, because it really, their impermanence is something that I'm not asking anyone that's listening to this to come to terms to that word or whatever that means to them. But at some point in our lives, we have to face the impermanence of life, because that is the ever changing in our life. You know, that's always the ever. It's happening without our awareness, and that's scary.
Yeah, it's confronting. Yeah, so it's hard to swallow. It's a hard pill to
Right.
swallow. Wow, that actually answered a question for me because I was like, yeah, what?
It can be beautiful. It can be a very beautiful thing if you come to terms with it, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, and there's a Pema quote that I really love, and she says, "Fear is the natural reaction to coming closer to the truth."
Oh my God. Wow. That's
So
a beautiful.
it's powerful. I mean, and it talks. What is fear? It's what we're uncomfortable, and it's also the impermanence.
What about gods and goddesses? I mean, we're not going to speak to Hinduism, but
Right. You know, to keep it like simple, I think like from what I believe and from what I remember, a lot of the goddesses that are talked about in yoga have both feminine and masculine equally. So therefore, I mean, that answers a lot of our questions. I mean, like, there's a lot I could say, but like, I mean, it pretty much answers it all, right? I mean, like, well, first of all, I want to make sure, like, it's not my culture to like really like be speaking about it, but I can appreciate that in terms of like there is the what we learn in like yoga teacher training in the goddess, there is equal masculine and feminine. They're not necessarily, you know, male or female, you know. It's
yes. Well, and I learned that too, so I can confirm that. Yeah. And,
right, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so that, you know, that there's another queer element to
Absolutely
to yoga. We already have been talking about inclusivity and queerness, but any more thoughts on that? So the inclusive language is key. What other thoughts on that?
I mean, I think just knowing how much, you know, we're doing ourselves a disservice, especially like, I mean, considering the politics in Texas.
Oh God.
Right. I mean, and I'll refer this to like, I was talking to my friend earlier today, and I was talking about how Buddhism, there is a belief that there is no Buddha coming up in our life, or like, you know, there's a saying that Buddha says, it's like, if you see a Buddha in the road, shoot him. It's not me, you know, because in Buddhism it is believed that there is no more prophet coming, And not to be religious or anything, but I love this aspect of what they talked about. And it's what they believe is the next thing is an enlightened community.
So no one prophet's going to come and save us all. We
Yes.
have to save ourselves, and within the community, we all have to come together as a community.
Yes, and I think that it only serves us best to do our best to our ability to create an inclusive environment, not only for queer people, but for everyone in our lives and in this world. Because it's not only about queer people, it's also about everyone as a whole. Because as we all know, post-pandemic, we're suffering through not only a health crisis, but a mental health crisis.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
I feel like whenever you have something, you're discriminating, or you have an idea about something that may or may not be false, you're holding on to something that doesn't help you in your life.
And it really hurts everyone, not just one group.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of what at least I've experienced in my life, the things I cling, and I'm only using my experience just as an example, but the things I tend to cling on to is all about reconciliation. It really just is about that, you know. So that's something that the listener can go on their little own selves and think about.
Yeah, reconciliation. Yeah. I'll have
to and I will say, like, if you are of a privileged, you have a bigger responsibility.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say that. So, and like, that is not for me to speak of, but I think people know, and I mean, you know.
I hope they know by now. Yeah.
I hope so too. I mean, I definitely know my own privilege, right? But and I use that to be able to create a broader space for people that are coming before me, or who are currently in our yoga community.
We all have a voice and something important to share with the world. Now it's easier, more than ever, to make a podcast of your very own and to amplify your voice thanks to Anchor by Spotify. I have been using this platform for going on 3 years now, and I can confidently say it is the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need right at your fingertips. Here's how it works. Anchor lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating right now, as in like today. With a single push of a button, you can distribute your podcast to the most popular listening platforms, including Spotify. Anchor is also the only place you can publish video podcasts to Spotify. With Anchor, creators can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. And best of all, Anchor is totally free. Yes, you heard it correctly. Anchor is free. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. I cannot wait to hear your podcast. It can be overwhelming to know how to help others during these trying times. It seems like every day there's a new disaster catching our attention, and it's hard to keep up and know how to help. The Ukraine still needs our support. The war in the Ukraine has continued, and if you are able, please consider donating to the organization Razum. Razum is providing critical humanitarian war relief and recovery to address the Ukraine's most urgent needs. To support Razum, go to razumfortheukraine.org. It's spelled razomforukraine.org. I have provided the link in the show notes. Give what you can. Hey friends! I just discovered my new favorite yoga accessory, Yoga Knees. This product really saved my knees. Yoga Knees help solve the problem of those times in class when we kneel on hard surfaces like your yoga mat. Now your knees can also be pain-free with Yoga Knees. They are super comfortable and made with durable material. Yoga Knees is a high-quality, built-to-last product. They are a woman-owned business manufactured by women and made in the USA. When you buy a pair of Yoga Knees, $1 of the proceeds goes towards St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. Yoga Knees is giving you all 10% off your first order. Go to yogaknees.com, that's spelled YOGAKNEES.com, and use promo code YOGAAND at checkout. The link is in the show notes. 30-day money-back guarantee. Remember to use promo code YOGAAND to get 10% off. Hey friends, let me tell you about my favorite herbal store, Earth Commons. It's more than an herb shop. They also offer gifts, body care, massage, yoga therapy classes, and more. I highly recommend their mystery herb class. I have learned so much about herbs from this class. One of my favorite things to get at Earth Commons is their bulk medicinal herbs. I like to make it into a tea, and actually right now I'm drinking lemongrass and nettle tea, and it is so delicious. Their herbal tinctures are fantastic. I use them to help with easing tension, anxiety, allergies, and even a sore throat. It's also the perfect place to find gifts for those who are challenging to shop for. They have candles, incense, natural makeup, teas, jewelry, pottery. You name it, they got it. For a limited time, Earth Commons is giving our listeners, that's you guys, 10% off your first order when you use the promo code YOGAAND at checkout. You can find them if you're in the Austin area at 813 Springdale Road, or visit them online at earth-commons.com. It's spelled EARTH-COMMONS.com. I'll link all their info in the show notes, so you're just one click away. And remember to use promo code YOGAAND to get 10% off your next order. And we're back. Is there space for queerness in the yoga community currently?
I think there is. There's potential, right? But one thing that I've personally shared my personal experience, that I've experienced with the yoga community, is that we've made it so commercialized that we've lost the true intention of what. I'm not saying everyone.
Yeah, of course.
But I think we've lost the beauty of what this practice can offer us. You know, I started personally working recently. I took a break from teaching, and I started teaching at a gym where a lot of people are dealing with injuries. And what's so beautiful is creating a practice that is not only safe for people, but it also is approachable, you know? And I think that in itself has a lot to say then, because yoga can be very acrobatic.
Yeah.
Which like is fun and all, but like the subtleties of what the practice offers that lead to that there's more wisdom within that than actually the gymnastic or the party tricks.
Well, and I mean, don't you feel that, I mean, you've traveled and you've gone to yoga studios and you've yoga in Austin, all over town. I have too. I feel like you show up anywhere on your mat and it feels pretty, for the most part, it feels pretty.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like, oh yeah, this is cool.
Yeah, I've never been to a studio where I'm like, wow, I need to roll up my mat and leave.
Or I don't feel safe because they're not
right.
going to accept me. Yeah, I haven't felt that.
That is true. I mean, I don't know. I hope that there's not a place in this world where that is, but I mean, I can't make assumptions, you know?
Well, let's talk about, you mentioned this phrase. I hope not either. You mentioned the phrase before we got on this call, rainbow washing. That's
Oh, yes.
And then how can we prevent that, especially during the month of Pride?
Right. Well, and I love me some rainbows. I mean, you saw, but I think it's just, it becomes performative at some point, because for me, like, Pride, I'm all about history. I love stories too,
Yeah.
So like for me, like it was a queer trans Black woman who started the ride for, Pride. It was on Stonewall, right? And I think it's a disservice for us to forget about that, our roots, and even before her, right? There is a lot that we can, not a lot of people that we can honor that have propelled us to the freedoms that we have now. And I think that there are a lot of studios who are really taking charge and really donating to organizations that help, like Out Youth, for example, are helping kids who are transitioning. And I think that's such a beautiful way to celebrate Pride, is to help marginalize, not queer people, but also, they are marginalized people and others as well, because it's like, I think queerness and race is coming hand in hand, in terms of like what we're talking about. And it only, it's, if you're a studio owner or someone listening, don't just slap a rainbow flag at your studio. And also to be aware, like if you're a practitioner, if they do have a rainbow flag, look at who their teachers are. Is it a diverse staff?
Yeah.
Is it just like, because they're wanting to be profitable? Because there are many places that, like, Pride should be every day. Just have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just want to say I loved the first moment I met you. You were covered in rainbows, about to take this. And then we right as we got on this call, right on your wall is a rainbow Mariah Carey poster.
Yes.
This is so wonderful, and I love it.
Yes.
And then I also wanted to mention, I don't know, do you follow Queer History on Instagram? It's a bunch of like queer history, and they're like old-timey photos of like queer couples, and it talks about, like, we're talking like,
I do.
Okay. I thought you would like it.
I love that actual page, because it, like, like along with this, like Marsha P. Johnson, who started the Stonewall riots, it was her friend, and she was a Latina trans woman too, who helped a lot. And it was just like powerful to know, even as a Mexican, right? I'm Mexican, a Latino, like to know other Latinos or Latinas or Latinx, I should say, that have created so much beautiful things in for our history, and it's honorable.
History, the trajectory.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's, having said, like, even with like it's just a lot. I feel like Pride not only opened, like, it also questioned a lot even for women's rights as well. I think it propelled a lot and to ask those questions too, And I only say that because of the things that are happening politically in Texas.
Oh, yeah.
Or in our world, I should say.
Every day it's something new. It's just,
yeah.
I'm curious how your thoughts on how the queer community could do better.
I feel like the queer community uh, like supporting each other is one of those things that like I think that, I mean, in any community, I'm gonna just say that there is a huge need to support each other, and find solidarity. And solidarity is so important because it makes us feel not alone.
Exactly. Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah. Or acceptance and non-judgment is what I would say. Like,
Right.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Who is your favorite queero? And when I say queero, I mean queer hero.
I would say Frida Kahlo has played a um, tremendous thing in my life. It's just she's played a huge role in my life. I, as a teenager, was obsessed with her, and I would read like stories about her, and like just I mean, I was raised with a mom who was like anti-colonial, you know. She didn't like the Spanish, which is a different story. You know what I mean? Who colonized Mexico, and like I grew up with believing Texas and California was part of Mexico. So I am so grateful for that as well, you know. And like just growing up and listening to stories of Frida Kahlo. I mean, the queer part was never mentioned growing up, but as I got older, I realized like this woman is like iconic.
Yes. She is so iconic. Oh my God. Yeah.
So that is who's your queero?
You know, I could do a long list, but Glennon Doyle and Lily Tomlin. Like Lily Tomlin, because she look at her career, you know, and she doesn't lead with it. She doesn't lead with, hey, I'm a lesbian, you know. She just is herself. There's just something so graceful about, I mean, and maybe she couldn't, you know, because, you know, she came up, you know, what, in the 70s, but she's just such a strong, powerful female who I just admire. And then Glennon Doyle do you know Glennon Doyle? She was a Christian. She was like married to a man, had 3 kids, was a Christian writer. She was a blog mom who was a Christian, like so not like you wouldn't expect. And then she fell in love with Olympian Abby Wambach, and now they're married. And so I think she made a lot of Christians like question, like themselves, because Christians still read her books, and now they're gay books.
Right. So, I remember you telling me about her, though, right?
Yeah, and she has a podcast. Her and her wife, and her wife Abby Wambach, and her sister Amanda. They all 3 have a podcast called "We Can Do Hard Things," and they talk about really important issues, and like they're very proactive, and so they're very much they're all about activism. And so I think that really speaks to my heart. I mean, I could go on and on, like I have so many in my head, but
I'll have to ask you for that book, because I literally told someone about that book today.
Oh, cool. Was it Brett?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, wait, Ashley told me about this really cool like author or a like person. I just can't remember. I'm horrible with names.
Glennon Doyle. Yeah. Oh, and then I just want to share really quick, my favorite queer sketch comedy show is Baroness Von Sketch, and they're Canadian and they're queer, and they're so funny, and it's kind of this feminine perspective, which you don't see a lot. But yeah, I just felt like I really had to share that because
totally
my heart. Yeah, so
I love that. I mean, there are many queer icons out there.
There's so many queer icons. Oh,
I will say, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, if you were to ask me at like at first thought, really my queer icon was Pauly Shore, but he's not queer. He's just
right.
He's like he kind of walks both lines. He's kind of like in the middle. But that like if I don't think about it, like that's my queer icon.
Right. Well, I mean, I would say too, like, as terms of like, I mean, I could say that about David Bowie.
Oh, well, he was
right.
He did, wasn't he with guys, but then he got with Amon.
But I think true. But I mean, that's very like. But see, that's the thing. It's like that's never really written down. So it's like hearsay. It's hearsay. Like so allegedly.
Have you watched David Bowie in his interviews? He gets interviewed by people. He is such a good interviewer because he doesn't put up with people's shit. Like everyone will ask like questions, and he is so evolved. He just knocks them down, and they'll ask like horrible questions, like racist, homophobic, and he just knocks them down and tells. If there were one person living today, like if I could bring back anyone, I would David Bowie. Like
for sure, absolutely. And I mean, I would say Mariah, but she's not. She is not a queer. Yeah, I mean, sadly. she's great, but I mean,
sadly, yeah, tragically, she is not.
I guess a poster will do. So yes, there you go. I will say, like, you know, I was at a restaurant once and I literally said, there were like a group of gay men next to us. And I said, yeah, you know, I think gay culture is rooted in a lot of gay culture is rooted in white supremacy. And I tend to say things more dramatic than they are.
Oh, okay.
And and then like I could feel like the knife and the fork just drop and like their heads like turn. But I mean it's true, and like that is something I've had to. I mean you can put this in the thing, but this is something I've had to clear and question myself. Is like, what are these cultural phenomena or cultural habits that I'm following that are rooted in racism? I mean, that's a whole question itself, you know, like in my life, like, is it what I'm doing best for the whole, or is it just part of me for myself? And I think that is something to be said about, like, that in itself is yoga, is to question yourself all the time, you know what I mean? And I think that I've come such a long way with my life. I mean, I'm obviously human, so I make mistakes, right? To be the best. I always say this is what I'm trying to say. I told my friend this morning as we were at Barton Springs, and I said, one thing that I'm tired of in the yoga community is gaslighting. Right. Yeah. And like there's this talk about enlightenment, blah, 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 you know, whatever that means to you. And I said this to you, enlightenment doesn't always have to be joyful. Yep. Right?
Yeah.
But I say with what I've come up with in my life is, what is enlightenment? And I think to live a spiritual life is to live a life of justice.
And can I also add, in my opinion, with the yoga community, humbleness, I think goes a long way, and to live a spiritual life. I'm just going to say that. Because
absolutely. I mean, like,
I think it's gaslighty when you're a teacher in this community and you put yourself on a pedestal like that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and that's a very good point. I mean, I think that in order to move forward in our yoga communities, people need to step back. And I'm going to say it, I mean, like, it is what it is. And, you know, like, I think there's a togetherness that we have to adopt. And I think that's unfortunate, because if you look at any yoga community, and I'm not just saying yoga communities in Texas, but all along everywhere you've gone to, rarely do you see a queer person or a minority up in that pedestal.
True.
It's usually
Rarely,
it's
yes.
right, and it's usually, if you think about it, look at the scenarios, right? If you think about it, most of the people, most queer people who have had a platform, or person of color who have had platform, have usually, the reason they have a platform is because they have followed the majority, meaning they've studied under someone who, quote unquote, is white or straight, right? I mean, and that's something to think about.
Yeah, that it really is.
I may be wrong, but just right, something to think about, right? An inquiry.
Well, and I love that this is an inquiry, and we're spelling
Right.
it INQUEERY.
Yeah. Well, and then this is as well, like, in to end it in a really good note, is that, like, what is living a spiritual life? And for me, like I said earlier, the way you treat yourself is the way you're asking others to treat you, as well as, like, your life, living a spiritual life is, the way that that's dictated is by the relationships, how the integrity of your relationships are in your life. And I'm not saying, I mean, my cat agrees. I don't know if you heard her, but I think that, and I'm not saying you have to be in good notes with everyone, right? It's really living a life of relationships with integrity to the best of your ability, because you will make mistakes and other people will hurt you. But I mean, obviously, that's having said, like, you have to stop talking to people, and sometimes, in order to protect yourself. That's not for me to decide. That's to the individuals. So that's what really enlightenment looks like to me, is how are the relationships in your life fruitful, and how what life of integrity are you living?
And also to plug your previous episode that you did with us, Yoga and Self-Parenting, if you want to know more about kind of that side of things. We talk in depth about letting people go, letting people who no longer serve, why this is useful. Yes, it's hard, but there's things you can do to kind of help yourself along. Check out that episode. That's in season 2. But well, thank you so much, Fonzy, for being on the show again. You know I love talking to you.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I was looking forward to this all week, and it was it's always an honor, and it's always what I love about our conversation. It's like we pick up where we left off, and that's, like, I feel like a beautiful sign of a friendship and relationships as well.
Totally. Yeah. Well, I hope to have you back on soon, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode all about yoga and queerness with the knowledgeable Fonzy Hernandez. Please check out Fonzy's other episodes, number 75 and 76, Yoga and Self-Parenting. Also, number 47, Yoga and Inclusivity, when you get the chance. Be sure to connect with Fonzy. All of his info's in the show notes, so you're just one click away from connecting with him, and I highly recommend that you do. Let us know how you like the episode. We love hearing from you. Please email us at yogaandpodcast@gmail.com. The and is spelled out, YOGAAND podcast@gmail. Please follow us on Instagram at yogaandpodcast. If you would like to support the show, consider joining our Patreon. There are great member perks. Check them out on patreon.com/yogaandpodcast. If Patreon is not your thing, we would really appreciate it if you could rate and review the show. It's what helps us reach new listeners. And while you're at it, please rate and review another podcast you like too. This small act is priceless to podcasters and can really help show your support. The theme song is performed by Allie Holder. Graphics, guest booking, and media by Bentley and Chloe Productions. Thank you for listening.